You are listening to the Heartland Author Podcast. I am Aaron Apollo Camp, the host of the Heartland Author Podcast. I am an author who has self-published one book and is currently writing multiple fiction, nonfiction, and poetry books. This is the Season 5 premiere of the Heartland Author Podcast, and it is great to be back after a 3-month summer break. But first, I need to issue a correction to something I said last season. During my interview of Maxwell Ivy last season, I referred to a business that ghosted me after I submitted a job application at the business and permanently shut down sometime after I applied for a job there. I did not mention the business by name during the interview, but the business in question is Royal Donut of Danville, Illinois, and while this podcast was on summer break, the business has been reopened under new ownership, and I can report that business there has been very good. I apologize to the current and previous owners of Royal Donut for having erroneously referred to their business as permanently closed, and I hope to be able to buy a few donuts from there very soon. For today's episode, I'm going to do a solo episode for the first time in a while and talk about why I keep a 20-year-old hardcover book dictionary on hand and how I use it from time to time as an author. For those of you wondering about interviews, my calendar is currently booked all the way from a few days from now to the first week of February of next year with interview guests, so do not worry, because I will be interviewing a ton of interesting people in the writing community throughout this season of the Heartland Author Podcast. About 20 years or so, just before my teenage years started, I got myself a copy of the New York Times Dictionary of Misunderstood, Misused, and Mispronounced Words. The dictionary was copyrighted in 2002, and there is not a newer version of the dictionary available to my knowledge. I honestly do not remember if it was a Christmas gift or if I got it at one of those scholastic book fairs at the last year my home school district had 2 elementary schools. If it were not for the almighty computer, I would not be an author because my handwriting is too terrible to draft a book manuscript by hand. Yet, despite word processing programs for computers often including spelling and grammar checkers, and dictionaries like the open-source Wiktionary and the world-famous Merriam-Webster dictionary being available online, having a physical dictionary, whether it be an unabridged dictionary, a bridged dictionary, or a specialty dictionary like the one I have, is an invaluable resource. It is easy for anyone to misunderstand, misuse, or mispronounce a word, even for an author. This is especially the case for words that are lengthy and or uncommonly used in everyday speech. I will be the first to admit that I sometimes trip myself up on words that I think I know how to spell and know the definition of. Having a specialty dictionary containing words commonly misunderstood, misused, and mispronounced often comes in handy as an author. One dictionary I would recommend if you are looking for something similar to the New York Times Dictionary of Misunderstood, Misused, and Mispronounced Words, but something more up-to-date, is the Dictionary of Difficult and Unusual Words from the Diagram Group, which is available to order in paperback on Amazon. The most recent version of the Dictionary of Difficult and Unusual Words was published in November of last year. That's the end of today's episode, but there will be many more episodes, including some interviews, throughout the rest of September. This is Aaron Apollo Camp reminding y'all to write your imagination. Bye for now. You can learn more about me and my book writing projects at campaaronapollo.witsite.com/authoraac. You can follow me on Twitter and Facebook at AuthorAAC and on Instagram at AACScribe. Copyright 2022, Aaron Apollo Camp, all rights reserved. This podcast episode is intended for the private listening of our audience. Any reuse or retransmission of this podcast episode without the express written consent of the podcast host is prohibited, except under fair use guidelines. Royalty-free music and sound effects obtained from https://www.zapsplat.com.